Hey, how's it going? So today we're gonna play Froslass Dusclops Munkidori deck, and yeah, it's just an improvement on the old Froslass Munkidori deck. And the idea of this deck is you get a couple of Froslass in play that says during Pokemon checkup, put a damage counter on each Pokemon in play with an ability except Froslass, both yours and your opponent's. So we damage our own Pokemon and move the damage over to our opponent's Pokemon with Munkidori. That if it has a dark attached to it, we can move 3 damage counters from one of our Pokemon to our opponent's Pokemon. Then we also have Dusclops for extra damage that says we can knock it out and put 5 damage counters onto our opponent's Pokemon. The Dusclops also lets us control our opponent's prize cards and lets us activate cards like Counter Catcher and Roxanne, which is really nice, and it lets us damage Pokemon that don't have abilities. So that is a bonus. We also have Snorlax and Mawile to retreat trap our opponent so that we can have extra turns to build up damage. Ideally, we use Snorlax for this so that we can use Rotom to draw in between turns, but we can use Mawile if we need to, and also have Bloodmoon to take the last 1 or 2 knockouts that we might need. After for Hyper Aroma in this deck as well, it's just better than any of the other ace specs to get out all your Froslass and Dusclops that you need. There's an argument for unfair stamp, but with this kind of deck you really need to set up, so I played the Hyper Aroma. Also got TM Devo for Charizard and Dragapult decks like that, and a Sinnoh to try and Roxanne Sinnoh Lugia late game and try and trap something in the active spot. Now I was playing Eerie and Xerosix when I first started playing this deck, and those cards are in the first game, but I eventually whittled it down to this because those just ended up being win more cards, so they just really weren't needed. And I cut them for like Rescue Board and another energy. Also definitely want to go second with this deck to try and play Irida or Arven for like Buddy Poffin and a Snorunt to get down 2 Snorunts and a Duskull, with an ideal board of like 2 Froslass, 1 or 2 Munkidori, a Snorlax, and a Rotom. But yeah, that is the deck, so let's get into the games. Alright, so my opponent is going first here, and looks like they don't want to bench anything else because I started a Snorlax, which is something funny that happens with this deck. People think you're playing quad Snorlax, so they don't put like their Greninja or anything else down. But I top deck a Pokégear here that is pretty nice. Now I use the Poffin and my Nest Balls before the Pokégear, of course, to increase the odds of hitting a supporter. I'm thinking about getting a second Snorunt, but decided to get Rotom and Munkidori so then I can bench my other Snorlax and bench another Snorunt after I knock out my own Dusclops and have pretty much the ideal bench that I'm looking for. And I don't even end up playing the Pokégear that turn. There's really nothing else I was looking for anyway. Nothing else I wanted, so I guess it makes sense to not play it. Also kind of was hoping that my opponent couldn't evolve. That would have been kind of cool. A Donk is always nice, and a Dusclops Donk would have been especially cool. But they get down their Greninja and Palkia to try to threaten using Greninja's attack next turn, which can be pretty devastating to a deck like this. So I'm probably gonna have to decide where to put the Dusclops damage before I would really want to. I'll probably throw it on the Palkia, but I want to get that out of play to stop them from taking 2 prizes with the Greninja, because this way they just can't take 2 prizes with it. My Munkidori would end up at 100 damage if they choose to knock out my Froslass. So I end up doing that. I Pokégear here to try and hit Xerosix, because making them discard 8 cards from their hand would be pretty awesome. But I don't hit it. I probably should have Ultra Balled first, but I wasn't quite sure what to Ultra Ball out of my hand. I could have got rid of like Eerie and Poffin. I don't know. I definitely could have done that in a different order, but I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do yet with the Ultra Ball and stuff. But I do end up getting rid of the Poffin and the Bloodmoon. I can Super Odd back the Bloodmoon, and I had planned to use the Poffin and then realized I can't use it because that's just going to give them an extra prize with their Greninja. I don't know. Probably should have done that in a bit of a different order, because I could have and I also should have used the Dusclops first. I messed that turn all up. So I should have Ultra Balled for the Dusclops, then tried to hit 0-6, and then used the Dusclops, put an extra card in their hand, and then used Eerie if I didn't hit the 0-6 to have the most options of stuff to get out of their hand. So yeah, definitely I was a little unsure. That can be the downside of playing like decks like this when you're figuring out how to play them. The sequencing can become kind of unclear sometimes because you're not 100% sure what the plan is for the turn and like what your goal should be. And I was just kind of end up playing cards until I figured it out. All right, but they play a Hyper Aroma, which is cool. That means they don't have Prime Catcher, and they also burned a Canceling Clone for some reason. They probably should have kept that for next turn. So that was definitely a mistake. And they do put the damage onto the Munkidori, which is also nice because that is extra damage I can move over to them without having a Froslass in play to damage itself. Now I can Irida for Snorunt and Hyper Aroma. Just bench the two Snorunts and save the Aroma for next turn. And put a little bit of damage probably on, I can either put it on the Palkia or the Greninja. I decided to do the Palkia. The reason I'm not putting it on Goldango is because I only want 5 damage counters on that for the TM Devo play. And that should happen pretty quickly with my Froslasses. Because the plan is hopefully they don't put like a bunch more Pokemon in play. And I can board wipe them in a few turns. I also kind of want them to knock out one of my Snorlax, but they end up bossing up my Rotom, so that kind of sucks. We can Roxanne them this turn though, and I could attach the Dark Energy somewhere. It'd be really nice if I could get another Munkidori down before I use the Roxanne, but the odds of that are pretty slim. I could have Hyper Aromaed last turn to increase the odds that I top deck like Nest Ball or Ultra Ball and not Froslass, which is what I end up top decking. But I wanted to keep the Aroma in the deck in case they Iono'd me. Which, I don't know, that's debatable if that's correct or not. I wanted to keep the option of Arven for double Froslass, so I did it this way. Also kind of unfortunately get punished by top decking Froslass. And now we Roxanne. This is the game I was still playing, the Eerie and 0-6. I did end up cutting those. But luckily we get into Counter Catcher, and that should buy us a turn because I doubt they play more than one switch unless they get into their Turo, which that would be pretty unfortunate. That'd be actually kind of devastating. They would 100% win if they got a Turo. But they're just going to attach to Greninja. That makes sense. They probably figure I definitely don't play Manaphy at this point. I would have gotten it earlier. And if they attach 3 times to Greninja, they can take their last 2 prizes, but I should win before they can do all that. I don't know if they have any more switch cards or anything. And I also only need 2 more turns to board wipe them. Even if they do end up benching like another Gimmighoul, those only have 50 HP, and I'm going to get another Munkidori down here. So I would just be able to knock out the Gimmighoul in 1 turn. I heavy ball for it because I noticed that one was prized earlier and confirmed it when I searched. And now I just got to move over 30 to the Palkia and 30 to the Greninja, and that'll set it up perfectly for me to TM Devo next turn and win the game. I do have to show them the TM Devo with the Arven, but I didn't want to like leave it in the deck and just hope that I top deck it next turn, so I had to grab it. That unfortunately lets them know what's coming, but I don't know that there's anything they could really do to play around it. Because even if they bench more Pokemon, this Palkia is still stuck in the active. I could just not TM Devo for a turn or use Munkidori to knock out a Gimmighoul and then Bloodmoon the other one. Either way, they just wouldn't have enough turns to win. And they do end up just, I think, waiting out the timer after they saw the Diva. They got kind of frustrated. Now I just have to move the damage over, and I do move over enough to just knock out the Greninja because I'm never very confident of this game in the way the interaction with Devo and Froslass would work, so I decided to just knock out the Greninja right away and knock out all their Pokemon. Alright, so this is like the first game after I took out the Eerie and the Xerosic. I took them out one at a time, but this is the first game when they were both gone. And of course we hit Lost Box, which is one of the main decks that I was figuring that the Xerosic and the Eerie would be very, very good against. And originally it just looks like that Sableye board wipe kind of a deck with all the Dusclops getting down. So I don't really expect to keep the Snorunt until next turn, but I don't really have much of another choice but to get Rotom and draw some cards. I retreat into the Snorlax to make it a little bit harder on them as well, and so that they can't cram my Snorunt if they do play that. They bench a Tina though, so this is Lost Tina it looks like. I don't know that that's the deck that I would imagine to play the Dusclops in. I would figure like Tina's already has so many cards in it, would be hard to find space for all that, but I guess they're trying like a 2-2 line or something like that in it to see how it works out. And they just jet into the active and use Abyss Seeking. This is their third jet down, so that's kind of good because we're going to want to Counter Catcher stuff and stick it later, even though there's really nothing great to Counter Catcher. Like, right, I'm kind of thinking I can Counter Catcher the Duskulls to force them to like blow them up to get them out of the active, and that would give us more prizes. And then I can knock out the Comfies and knock out the Giratina for my last two. So it seems like this match should be pretty winnable as long as they don't like Greninja me or get off like too many Sableyes in a row too quickly or anything like that. A Nest Ball for Sableye. I immediately clicked the Lost Zone to see where they're at, and if they had a Colress they would have been able to wipe out my Snorunt and my Duskull, so that would have been very unfortunate. And yeah, this turn I'm going to try to use my Dusclops, and I'm going to put the damage on the Sableye because I want to get ahead of them in using them and not give them Counter Catcher. So now if they use their Dusclops, we'll be at the same prizes, so it won't activate that for them. And this is like probably one of the main examples of why Dusclops improves this deck, because before it's really hard to knock out a Sableye in the older version of the deck, and now you can knock it out pretty quickly with the Dusclops. And I also preemptively benched the Munkidori, or it's not preemptive because I already have damage in play, but it sucks that I don't have 30 damage in play because I would have just been able to get rid of the Sableye right away, but it's actually almost better that I do it this way in hindsight, because they'd just be able to like super out and bench it or bench another one, because it would make sense that a deck built like this would play two Sableye. So I probably do want to just keep their board stuck. Actually, never mind, because they can just use Dusclops and bench one. So that's probably what they should try to do, is attack with their other Sableye. And I stupidly Counter Catcher the Duskull. Like as soon as I played the Counter Catcher, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I should have done that just yet. Because it's just, I don't know, they can get it right out of the active, and having the Tina stuck in the active for a couple more turns would have been better. I should have Counter Catchered it after they used one to force them to use the second one. They do pop it and put the 50 onto my Froslass, which unfortunately makes it so that they can knock out my Froslass and my Munkidori. And it's like completely perfect math. Luckily though, they couldn't bench a new Sableye and attack with a new one because they would have needed an extra switch. So we do have that going for us, because I can just rebench my Munkidori, knock out this Sableye, and Iono them to 3. I was going to Forest for a Roxanne, but Iono will work and I'll be able to save my Forest Seal Stone use. And that's actually going to put us like pretty close to winning the game, because now all I have to do is wait for the two Comfies to get knocked out and use Bloodmoon to knock out their Giratina. And if they evolve it into the V-Star, I could also just Munkidori some damage over to it and knock it out that way. So this should end up working out, and hopefully they brick a little bit off of this Iono to 3. It's kind of what I'm hoping, because I want to get into a Counter Catcher and probably bring up the Giratina to avoid or make it less likely that they can Sableye me, hopefully. I was thinking about using the Switch Cart there to heal my Snorlax a little bit, but I don't think it's overly worth it, so I don't end up doing it. And now I can knock out their Sableye, and if they bring up a Comfey, I'll probably Forest for Counter Catcher, just to stick the Tina in the active. They shouldn't have like the most amount of Switch cards left. Giratina generally doesn't play the most. They're down 3 Jet Energies and 2 Switch cards, so there is still a couple left in their deck for sure, but hopefully this will end up leaving it in the active spot. And yeah, I just really would rather them not be able to use Sableye. I also probably shouldn't have benched the Snorunt either, but if they were to Sableye my Froslass, I wouldn't have a really like good efficient way to knock out these 2 Comfeys that have been building up damage all game. And I don't bench the Snorlax because I got the Rescue Board in play now, so I don't need to bench stuff ahead of time. I can wait and see what happens and then decide what I want to do next turn as far as like benching other Pokemon and whatnot. Because ideally I would just be able to attack with Ursaluna if they take a knockout, and they do, or it looks like they're going to. I also could have benched that Duskull to try and be sure that I could get them down to at least 2 prizes next turn to use Bloodmoon, but I didn't want to put 2 60 HP Pokemon in play. I don't know. I do get the Dark Energy out of the prizes, so that almost surely seals up the game because I can Pal Pad back in Arven and Iono, and then Arven for Ultra Ball and then use Ursaluna. That took me a little bit because I was trying my best to remember if I prized it or not, but then I do have Heavy Ball still in there, so even if I did prize it, I could just use Heavy Ball to get it out of the prizes. And now I can just retreat, and as soon as I attach the energy, they end up conceding. So yeah, I don't know, this deck is pretty cool, and I think there's definitely something to a deck like this. Definitely something with manipulating your prize cards with the Dusclops. There's got to be something there that's like completely broken. And I think with like enough practice of this deck, it is really hard to play because you have to think so many turns ahead, and you have to map out the damage counters that are going into play, which can be kind of hard to do. It's just so many numbers to think about. And for some reason, I'm always worse at doing that online than I am in real life. For some reason, when I'm playing with real cards, it like seems easier to figure stuff like that out. But yeah, after just, I don't know, I probably played like 10 or 15 games of this, working on the list and stuff, until I ended up settling on this, which is pretty far off of where I started. Because I started with like, I think a 4-4-2 Dusclops line, thinking that I would definitely want to use a couple Dusknoir during the game, because putting 13 damage counters on something would make this deck so much easier to win games with. But you need so much more space for other cards. Like, it started more like a control deck with Misfortune Sisters and all that kind of stuff, and accompanying flutes, until I whittled out almost all the control cards except for like Counter Catcher and Snorlax and Mawile, down to just this more streamlined version of the deck that I think is much better than where I started, because it's much better at doing what you're trying to do instead of like being a deck that takes prizes cosplaying as the Snorlax deck. Either way, definitely try it out. You know, let me know what you guys think, comment, like or dislike, and subscribe and stuff. Definitely a fun deck, definitely pretty cool. I'm certain that there's something broken with Dusclops. Just have to figure out what it is. So take care.